those notes, if you feel like following along, we have a couple smaller updates, and then we have a guest presenter, Peter, today from AccessNow. We'll be starting with a couple of acknowledgements about the current state of affairs, especially in New York City. I just want to acknowledge that there was a pretty interesting social effort on Twitter that I noticed called Shutdown STEM, which some people may have participated in, some people may not have been able to. Regardless, if anyone would like to share their experiences in participating in Shutdown STEM, that's totally great. Otherwise, I just wanted to acknowledge it and say that while we may still be having our meeting on the day that was flagged by STEM organizations to strike for Black Lives Matter, we're still recognizing that the work we're doing is very important and intended to help rectify racial injustice that may be prevalent in technology and access to technology in New York City. So it's a really cool movement. You can check it out. It's like a, hashtag situation, just hashtag shutdown STEM. Again, it's meant to unite technologists and scientists who are hoping to make some noise around Black Lives Matter in their industry and to identify racial injustice in STEM as it stands. So on that note, we had an interesting discussion with installation this past week, and I think we came to a pretty good spot. Oh, great link, Audrey, thank you. Shutdownstem.com, love it. Cool. So yeah, on that same note of the relevant political movements happening all around the country, all around the world, and specifically in New York City, some other installers and I spoke with a couple of install leaders this past week in regards to how we handle transparency and risk when it comes to installation, protesting, and the pandemic. So I think the conclusion that we've reached, and if you have opinions on this or different experiences, please feel free to speak about them now. But the conclusion that we reached was if you have been actively protesting, it is part of the ethos of Mesh to be transparent with your potential new member and the person whose home you're going to install. One of the installations last week was rescheduled because the installee was uncomfortable with her father, who is 75 and was hoping to help with the installation, being potentially exposed to up to 3 installers who had all been protesting. So all 3 of us were attempting to take ownership over the risk that we were bringing to the table with these installations, and the new member with whom Tariq spoke with mentioned that she did appreciate that we were transparent and wanting to keep everyone safe, especially with the enthusiasm that the new members were showing us. Her father really wants to help us install his node. She really wants to help us install her node. So we wanted to make sure that we met everyone's needs as safely as possible. Oh, people in Slack are asking for a Zoom link.
I actually DM'd it to both of them.
Okay. I put it in the meetings channel.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't think we care about them RSVPing through the meetup necessarily. This is kind of the exact scenario at Adobe when people are slacking us that they can't get in the front door, but it's Zoom. So thanks for taking care of that.
Definitely.
And okay, so we covered Shutdown STEM. Thanks for sharing that link, Audrey. I'm going to put that in the notes. And we covered transparency and risk in installation. If you're signed up for installations in the upcoming future and you've been protesting, it is up to you to gauge the risk and the comfort levels of communicating that with your new installation member. I do think if anyone has any questions about how to go about those conversations politely or professionally, we're open to having those conversations together. And we just all need to make sure that our priorities are to first be keeping everyone safe. Second, make sure that everyone is aware of our values and the transparency that we're promoting here. So, and then I have a third quick update that is actually not about work that I've been doing, but was asked to mention by a couple of members. Willem, whom you all probably know, and Akash have been working on a very cool project, which is a stream of Department of Transportation street camera data that they're hosting on a mesh node of Akash's. And so neither of them are able to be here today, but we are hoping to get a blog post and a page up about the work that they're doing. It's a really interesting collaboration between Akash's work and Mesh Network. And I think that if you're interested, you're welcome to ping either of them. I'm happy to give you their Slack handle, so you can just DM me. It seems like a very creative way to go about the coolest parts of a mesh network. It seems much aligned with the work that the Seattle protesters have been doing, harnessing camera data from surveillance cameras. So you can DM me to point you to those people, or I can try to answer any questions, but I think you should just talk to them directly if you're interested in getting involved. And then Scott, who is on the call, has been working on a lot of grants. He's not able to video cam right now, but he had a couple of different grant projects going, and one of them did come through today. Let me get the name of the network. It actually goes through the Internet Society of New York, but it is a successful partnership agreement that will help us with the Vernon Hub project. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about that, Scott?
I don't think so. I think I briefly talked a little bit about what the Vernon Hub project was. It's been a big collaboration from a lot of folks. It's a NYCHA development out in kind of the Bushwick area that will hopefully be a really large hub for us that not only will take some of the traffic off of Saratoga, but kind of expand new neighborhoods, as well as serving NYCHA residents with open access Wi-Fi. But we got news today that we were approved for a $15,000 grant to be able to do all the work that we're trying to put together there. So that's some exciting news. Olivier put together the budget. Brian did a field visit. There's been many folks involved in making this happen, and we are one step closer to making it a reality. So that's really exciting. And anybody who, I know that a number of folks on this call and on previous calls have been interested in kind of NYCHA outreach, NYCHA collaboration efforts. If you are interested in doing that kind of work, by all means, reach out and get in touch, because this project is kind of it's been kind of in the works for a long time, and a lot of back and forth with NYCHA and kind of convoluted, crazy conversations of bureaucracy. But it's finally kind of getting to the point where I think we can really be inclusive and involving lots of folks in doing outreach and building the network and doing all of the kinds of, I think, more hands-on, more interesting work that's not trying to respond to some attorney at NYCHA's questions about some esoteric part of NYC Mesh. Anyways, positive news. Reach out to me by all means if it's something that would interest you. We're really hoping that this is the start to a long-term collaboration that we can do a lot more related work with NYCHA on.
Awesome. Thanks for all the work on that. I know that those areas are pretty excited to get more support, and thanks for everyone who's been working on that. Brian, would you care to take a couple of updates for Grand Street or future or other NYCHA updates?
Yeah, Grand Street's still ongoing, but it's live now. The access points are turned on, and we're getting like 100 megabits per second, which is great. Nice speed for the residents there. And we've got, I think it's four or five are active now, and we've got another 2 or 3 to do. And yeah, so it's great. It's coming along. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. And if someone's interested in working on that, or to supporting on that in any way, which Slack channel would you direct them to?
Yeah, there's a Slack channel for Grand Street. It's hub-grand.
Cool. I will add that to the notes. Great, and then
I'll just say something else about Grand. We're using that as a model for what we're going to do with a lot of nature buildings, hopefully. And so it's very important what we're doing at Grand Street. And we're doing things there we've never done before, like light poles. It's pretty crazy, going way up on ladders and putting access points on the very top of light poles, and getting electricians to do outlets inside the poles. So we've got all the skills now to do that at any nature building. Like, it's going to be the same kind of idea. So it's very, very important thing we've done at Grand Street, and it's going to be a showcase for what we're doing going ahead.
that is awesome. And also just incredibly important for the city. I'm glad that we are making progress on that. Thanks for the update. I'm adding the Slack channel. And then is Peter on this call right now? Let me see.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, there you are.
Hey.
I'm going to go into grid view. Thank you. So would you like to give an introduction, and some little tips about AccessNow? We can get into your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So yeah, I'm Peter Mysek, Bed-Stuy resident. I've been lurking on the Slack for a while, and I'm glad to have this chance to present on my day job with AccessNow, and connect with you all, and hopefully find some ways to collaborate further. So I am one of those annoying lawyers who was described earlier. And that's another way I think I might be able to contribute some skills to the group. But yeah, so in my day job, I'm the general counsel of AccessNow. We're a global digital rights organization, been around about 10 years, and I've had a putative headquarters in New York the whole time, as we've moved to achieve our global ambition. And go to the next slide. I think it'll have our mission statement. We are, as I said, growing around the world. This slide's a little bit old. We have around 75 staff now in around 14 countries. But our mission is the same: to advance human rights, to defend and extend the digital rights of users at risk. So we're a human rights organization focused solely on digital spaces and on access, connectivity, and the rights that accompany digital tools. So we got our start during the Arab Spring, during the actually the Green Movement, before the Arab Spring, during the Green Movement in Iran around 2009. I got my start with the organization shortly after the Arab Spring, a couple years later. And that's where we saw this need, this gap where people were creating user-generated content for the first time, using mobile networks and digital tools at a mass scale. But the law certainly hadn't caught up to protect that content as vital democratic participation and human rights documentation. And the platforms certainly hadn't either. So Silicon Valley needed a bit of education. So we got our start focusing on those country situations, but quickly saw that this was the new way that people were going to protest, exercise their rights, and they needed protection, really specifically working at this intersection of human rights and tech. So yeah, we're around the world. This is how we kind of define our charitable community. We are a 501c3 registered in the US and a few other countries. And the charitable class, yeah, are these users at risk. And so we're talking about human rights defenders of all stripes, journalists, both independent bloggers, as well as major media activists, dissidents, and folks in vulnerable and marginalized communities. We do a lot of work with the LGBTQI community in various countries on gender, and really try to work closely with communities at risk. So how we achieve our mission is here. We have around 6 avenues toward that, with a staff of around 75, 80 folks. We combine policy and advocacy work, so that's traditional legislative work, working on regulation, killing bad bills, and advancing norms around issues like net neutrality, facial recognition, and the like. We convene people through RightsCon. It's an annual summit. Around 3,000 people. We're in Tunisia last year. We were planning to go to Costa Rica this year. We give grants, mainly to Global South countries. I lead the legal team, as I said. We intervene in court cases, and then we provide direct technical support as well. So we have a digital security helpline that I'll talk more about in a sec. So yeah, that's our mission. On the policy team, these are kind of the broad issue areas where we work. It's as you can imagine, growing every day as everything becomes digitalized, and more of our systems move online. These rights become more and more interconnected to daily life, and so these are some of the main issues, and the campaigns that we run come under these topics and touch on these. So I'll talk a little bit about the Keep It On campaign, which is a campaign against internet shutdowns that NYC Mesh is a great member of that coalition. But we also run campaigns for the right to encrypt, for net neutrality. We do digital security work constantly through our digital security helpline. And then data protection and privacy are huge areas. Data protection is led out of our Brussels office primarily. Can move on. So yeah, I was excited to show this because I do a lot of work at the UN, and this was when we got to speak before the General Assembly. We do try to change policies. So in addition to the kind of grassroots grant making and digital security work, we engage in government. So we lobby governments in DC, Brussels, Delhi, Latin America, and beyond. And we also, speak directly to the tech companies pretty often, both telcos and internet sector. So our helpline is really our bread and butter, I think. We are responding to up to 180 requests for support each month. So that's 180 tickets we are getting each month. And this is a global, it has a global scope. It's operating in up to 8 or 9 languages, 24 hours a day. It's run like a real tech support hotline, through email, through various platforms, and provides direct technical support. So that often involves questions around accounts, so social media accounts, compromise, hijacking, the requests for activation, as well as deactivation and suspension. Say if someone lost control of their device or they're detained. We also work on full-scale network shutdowns. We get requests for support, circumventing and mitigating censorship. And this helpline is open to all, anywhere in the world. You can use it. Just write to help@accessnow.org and get free of charge assistance. As I mentioned, RightsCon is our annual event. Maybe some of you have heard of it, hopefully. We used to hold it in Silicon Valley every other year, but since the Trump administration came, we've been going abroad. It's a multi-stakeholder event. It brings together a lot of technologists, governments, tech companies, and civil society activists of all stripes. We will be online for RightsCon at the end of July. As I said, we are unable to go to Costa Rica this year. Thanks. Go to the next slide. That'll discuss our main campaign, Keep It On. And again, this is where NYC Mesh is one of the more than 200 organizations that have pledged to help us fight internet shutdowns. So internet shutdowns is a broad term that we use to describe a number of different actions, from kill switches that shut down all mobile networks to BGP routing changes that take entire regions or countries off of addressing tables, down to kind of service level shutdowns, like WhatsApp being shut down in a town or city in India during protests or demonstrations. And so this is a growing problem. We track internet shutdowns globally, and we have noticed a rapid increase since 2015, up to over 213 shutdowns last year. They're growing in length. Kashmir, which has been shut down since August of 2019, and refugees in Myanmar have lost access for months. And then we see more targeted shutdowns during elections, for example, like in Burundi about a month ago, and a number of other African countries. So it is a growing problem that we think violates a range of human rights and puts people more at risk. So it's a little bit about the campaign. NYC Mesh is a member. We have members from over 90 countries. This is a few years old now, and we have kind of matured the campaign with materials that we share. These are CC licensed materials. We're happy for you to use these and promote the campaign, and contribute to the mailing list, which is pretty active and pretty well managed as mailing lists go. Happy to put you in touch with our folks running the campaign. And I can talk in the next slide about a little more specific actions that we do to get out the message of Keep It On, to call out governments that are shutting down networks, and to document technically both the disruptions and the ways to circumvent. So there's a lot of advocacy going on. This includes statements by organizations, by governments. It includes everything down to tweets up to major intergovernmental UN resolutions. On the documentation side, we depend on a number of network measurement tools and communities. Open Observatory of Network Interference has been a long-time member, as well as, and then we get some support from the private sector. Oracle bought Dyn, which runs the Internet Intelligence Monitoring Service. And we also speak with IOTA, a project of Qaeda, University of California, San Diego. Wikimedia, some private companies like Facebook do from time to time tip us off to shutdowns. The technical side is really important, and it's something I thought this community would be interested in. Circumvention is also a growing topic. Sometimes we can recommend VPNs to circumvent, but other times, if it's full network shutdowns, you would need some alternative method to get to the global internet, right? So satellite, landlines, perhaps, or more creative ways. I engage in litigation. That's another place that we're fighting back and trying to find remedy, as well as grant making. So I've talked a while, and I think there's 1 or 2 more slides, but I'll be happy to take questions. So this is how you contact me. Please check out our stuff. You can join Keep It On and some of our other campaigns around digital ID, and encryption, that sort of thing. And yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of this community, and happy to have you involved in our work. So thanks again for inviting me.
Hey, thanks. The presentation really gives us a great overview of your active projects. I took a bunch of notes. I hope that's okay with you, that are in our meeting notes. Just letting people who can't be here a little bit more about the work that you guys are doing and how they can get involved. Does anybody have any questions for Peter?
I could ask. I have a couple questions. Thanks for the great presentation. I was wondering if you just had any knowledge about any examples, like as specific as you want to get, or anything you wanted to share about kind of what you were saying about circumvention, and some different responses to that. You mentioned like VPNs, and then sometimes even more kind of aggressive, or we could say like infrastructural responses. And specifically, I'm wondering if you know of cases where like mesh networks were actually used to kind of perform some of that circumvention, like, you know, lateral connections to other access points or something like that. Any cases you may know of, or anything like that?
Right. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, circumvention is pretty important for the people that are going through these events. So the techniques can range from, you know, onerous offline methods like driving to the next state or the next town. Over longer term shutdowns, people have organized services where they'll gather everyone's cell phone, drive them, you know, 5 hours to the border, hit send, and then drive back. To you know, Sudan, where there was a piece that I could circulate, because in Sudan, a lot of telecom engineers, the people actually working for the telcos that were executing the shutdown orders, simultaneously were taking measures to help people circumvent. And some of those involved working with internet connected, you know, stationary device points of access like ATMs, I think, and finding ways to turn those into hotspots, and using, you know, dark fiber and business landlines and bank landlines, which are often left up during these events to get you know, civilian traffic out. As far as the more advanced techniques, I mean, as far as mesh networks, it seems like you'll need to have a, you know, functioning mesh network in place before the shutdown occurs, before the crisis comes, for it to be effective during the crisis. And that's these events they're not impossible to predict, but they're hard to predict. And then, you know, that would also bring to mind security concerns, because if the government is shutting down networks, they're also, you know, probably doing a lot to surveil traffic. So yeah, security would be another concern. I think the Open Technology Fund has probably funded some of these. But yeah, I mean, we're getting requests right now for help developing an app that might send data over voice, right? Because voice is often left up. If there's a way to get data out over that, that's the thing. Text to tweet is another thing that seems to have worked in some cases. Yeah, and then if you could cache info locally, you know, in theory, at least you could have some sort of local network running, even if it doesn't get out to the global internet. But you're the experts.
It's interesting. Text to tweet, that's how it started.
Yeah.
Really?
That was like my first internship was live tweeting from the UN for using text to tweet.
Nice. Yeah, I remember that in Egypt, and I think some other MENA cases.
Yeah, and I like the idea of internet over voice. That's going back to the modem idea too.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that's plausible, but there's a lot of interest, and yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a lawyer, but we do have some tech folks on staff, mainly out of Berlin, that I would love to, put you in touch with.
Yeah, it's very viable doing internet over voice. It's how it started.
I would think. Yeah, and what everyone can also just go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. Our weekly newsletter is got a lot of good content as well.
Is there some way that we can work together on any projects? Or?
Thanks. We have the mailing list, and I can't speak for all of our members all over the world, but like I said, there is a kind of increasing request for technical understanding of how disruptions occur, to pinpoint where in the network the blocking is taking place, can help people more quickly learn, find the right circumvention tool. And so, when the shutdowns are happening, anyone who has vantage points onto networks around the world could help, as well as folks with skills understanding network management. And then, also signing on to letters and joining in the kind of advocacy side would also be quite useful.
Yeah, that's interesting. So tech support and advocacy. Yeah, I was wondering more like physical things that we could do with our network.
Yeah.
For the city.
Yeah. So there are, like I said, the network measurement folks in like UNI, Open Observatory Network Interference, might, sometimes they use probes. A lot of them use app-based measurement tools. Some of them, I think, use web-based. And so, yeah, I mean, they might be interested in how they could use vantage points on your network to carry out some of the monitoring.
We have a question from the chat as well about if satellite will change how your org works.
Yeah, so that's a question that I have. I've developed a project proposal looking at these low Earth orbit satellite constellations that are being proposed, and I think it sort of depends on national governments. That's usually where the problem lies, is in the last mile. So if the governments allow, yeah, I don't know. I have questions. I have questions about how people will actually access the bandwidth that these satellites are providing, how consistent it'll be, how affordable it'll be, and how it'll be regulated. Because my guess is that most governments don't love the idea of a bunch of satellites owned by some U.S. company, sending signals through their spectrum. So, in theory, they could help, certainly increase connectivity to rural areas hard to access by landline networks. And there's also a lot of issues around privacy-free expression. If you have, one company providing, as a vertically integrated service from the satellite down to the consumer. But yeah, setting those aside, I'm somewhat hopeful that they'll bring connectivity to rural and difficult to reach areas, but also a little bit concerned about what national governments might do to inhibit their work.
They can't really stop a satellite signal. They can try and regulate the hardware to receive it.
Right. They couldn't stop the signal, but they could require a license to use the spectrum, couldn't they?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Things in space aren't really regulated that much.
Yeah, jamming and then detection. I think they could detect who's using satellite.
They should definitely be able to detect the outbound signals.
All right.
I know this just anecdotally from somebody I used to work with in China that he used some sort of satellite connection to access the internet, and I don't know if that was something that was tracked by them, but he seemed to be completely okay using it consistently. I could look into what he was using. I imagine it was illegal, but.
Cool. Yeah, they certainly promise higher bandwidth than has been possible before with these new forms of satellites. Yeah, so we'd love to invite more of you to join our mailing list, certainly our newsletter, and I think finding ways to interact with our community and speak to the technical side would be pretty cool. And maybe some longer term projects, deploying networks in places that do have endemic disruptions.
Like New York?
New York, yeah. I think we have not seen intentional disruptions in New York. Maybe they shut down service to the tunnels after a terror threat around 2006, I think.
Oh, wow.
In San Francisco, they did shut down service in the Bay Area rapid transit tunnels during a protest in 2011.
Wow.
I think, but we have not seen, thankfully, intentional, politically motivated disruptions here. One thing that though we have talked about is working on a city council bill or some sort of municipal statement that the internet is a human right, that access is a human right, and swearing against intentional disruptions of that service, right?
Mm-hmm. My cousin said last year there was some internet disruptions in Hong Kong during the protest months. Is there any work that you guys are doing in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, it's Hong Kong is a pretty specialized situation in a way that it's quite sophisticated from the government side as well as among the protesters. So they have all sorts of ways to communicate, circumvent, and this stems from before this current protest movement. A few years ago, we were hearing about peer-to-peer communications through FireChat, I think it was, and other tools. So we're in touch with some folks on the ground there, and certainly monitor the situation. From what I think we did issue a statement actually to the Hong Kong government in August or September of 2019, asking that they don't shut down the internet, and they actually did respond to our joint statement, saying that they would try to uphold free expression, but could be forced to take measures to interfere, right? So we have done a little bit specifically on Hong Kong, and are in touch with partners who are more active there. Right. So I think the question in the chat is about this idea of a city council legislation. There's various authorities that could be used to take control of communications networks in the US. So Section 706 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 gives the president authority in, I think it's serious emergencies might be the terminology. In addition to that, there is a standard operating procedure 303 that is pretty obscure. We haven't been able to actually read it. There's been fights in court to actually read it, but that that was developed, to respond, it seemed like, to a 9/11 type situation. So those are the ones we know in law. States have also, police powers, just like they shut down the city for lockdown. In theory, they could do similarly, I would say, over communications networks. So I think the idea, would be to call out this risk and to get the council or even the state, to say we, proactively are committing to keep networks on during even during emergencies. There's also a draft federal. I believe there's a draft federal bill, but anyways, FCC Commissioner Rosenworcel has been pretty vocal about the shutdown threat. You can just Google. She did an op-ed in Slate, I think, a few months ago. Yeah. So it might be a little bit aspirational, but I think it's good to call out these threats before they occur, right?
What was the name of those things again? 303 something?
Yeah, so SOP, so the two authorities, I'll write them in the chat.
Okay.
I would imagine that right now is probably a great time to be able to talk with people at city council or elsewhere about such an idea, simply because with all the protests going on and things like that, the kind of right to speech and right to these sorts of things, has almost never been more important in many ways.
Thanks. I completely agree. I think this is the time, and just like at the federal level, people are seeing all these powers that the president has that maybe previous administrations we wouldn't have thought would actually use, but now they we need to rethink the controls of the federal level, and I think same for the local level.
Yeah, imagine if they shut off our cell service during the protests. That would have been crazy.
Yeah, that's what they do in a lot of countries. So.
Do you have bill text that you've tried to propose elsewhere in other kind of localities?
Yes, we do. We would have to adapt it to the U.S., but we have some language we've worked on with U.S. Congress, and then stuff we've seen considered in other countries that I can share. I actually keep a pretty dirty Google Doc, but that has some links to some of this text that has been passed in resolutions and that sort of thing.
I'm not sure if this is an open floor, but I have a somewhat related topic I wanted to get people's opinions on. As mesh operators, I'm sure a lot of us keep track of like different trends, network security. Cloudflare posted last week a blog post about an uptick in attacks. While they might have their own like marketing reasons for doing so, I was wondering if things along these lines are on anybody's mind as mesh operators, especially since our IP space is somewhat coveted in terms of classification.
Yeah, I've certainly seen the reports of upticks in cyber attacks, especially on hospitals and healthcare authorities, and it's pretty scary.
Hi. I'm just wondering if there are any mesh apps available on mobile phones. I was just looking it up, but I'm sure that you guys know more than I know. So I'm just wondering if that's a possible way to go when providers shut down.
There are some Bluetooth mesh network apps that were used during some big protests. I don't remember exactly, but it might have had fire in the name, but you could send text messages through Bluetooth through a mesh of people. It was pretty cool. Oh, they used them in Hong Kong.
Yeah, the mesh apps on phones are only for text messages.
I just want you guys to know that I am grabbing all these links as they're posted in the chat, and they'll be held in the notes if you want to access them later.
Okay.
How do we get access to notes? Is that? I guess I just joined via the Meetup group. Is there?
Sure.
How
Sure.
did you guys like? Is there a Google Drive that everyone has access to or something? How does that work? Like, where are the notes?
So if you scroll up in the chat, I've posted a link to the notes there, and we can also send them to you if you're on the Slack group.
Oh, okay.
The history only shows if you were in the call when you posted it.
Gotcha. I'll repost those.
Oh, I'm on the Slack group, so I can just send you a Slack message as well.
Cool. Yeah, I posted it in the Slack channel #meetings. Thanks for that clarification on Zoom functionality with chats, by the way.
No problem.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions for Peter? That was a really great presentation. A lot of shared values here, a lot of really cool work that I think we're all on the side like Googling and reading about as we're learning, which feels great. If there are any other questions for Peter, now's your chance.
Yeah, well, again, these are cool ideas, and I hope to get more involved in your community, and welcome you to check out our stuff too.
Cool. And I think at the very least, you have a couple new Twitter followers. But great. So on that note, that was our final update / presentation for this part of the meeting. The next part of this meeting will be to breakout groups. So you'll be able to stay in this meeting if you want to just chat with some people. And then we'll make a breakout group for the tech working group, which is for questions on installs, or if your current installation is having issues, or just other technical issues, networking questions for our subject matter experts. And then there'll be another breakout group called Outreach, where we will gladly welcome any new members, anyone who has ideas on outreach or marketing, design, things like that. So let us make these. Okay, so